Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Talking Cafe Live. Today, we've got a very interesting subject. Our guest speaker is Jenny Groves. So welcome to you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. So Jenny is part of a support group for people affected by self-harm, and the support group is called Battle Scars. Jenny, do you just want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, just to give you a bit of an idea, we are a registered charity. We are a small registered charity, but what makes us quite unique is that we're 100% survivor-led and run. So everybody in the organisation's got lived experience of self-harm. And our aim is to support people of all ages who are affected by self-harm. We use the word affected by self-harm. So it's not just the people who do self-harm, but it's also the families, the friends, and the professionals who support them or come across these sort of people through the work and stuff. So it's quite, we try to just kind of wrap around everybody who's, like I said, affected by self-harm. And our definition of self-harm is also very broad. It's probably the broadest you might come across. Anything, a lot of people think it's cutting, but actually it's not. That's just like the most common method. But we got any kind of harm to the self that's external, internal, and also psychological. So again, like I said, it's just a very, very broad definition.
Yeah. I read somewhere that it also includes eating disorders. Is that right?
Yeah, for
So
two reasons.
that's classed as self-harming as well, then?
We class it as self-harming. In most places, and like the NICE guidelines and stuff, it is not. They're not put together, but it is a form of self-harm as far as we're concerned, because somebody's causing harm to themselves. But it's also the reasoning behind it, and what somebody's trying to get out of it that matches with other forms of self-harm. So that need to get control is pretty much behind all the self-harm, and that's very much present with eating disorders, which is why we include them.
And as you're a survivor yourself, what are the reasoning behind self-harming? To the likes of myself who haven't experienced it in my lifetime for family and friends, I find it hard to get my head around someone would intentionally hurt themselves.
Yeah, it is very hard for people to understand. And one thing that we're saying is, if you've never done it, you will never really grasp it. But that's okay, and don't beat yourself on the head for it. It's just the way it is. It's just one of those things that unless you've done it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And a lot of people will say, oh, you're doing it for the relief. You're doing it, to just get some release. But not everybody gets that. So it's a lot more complex than that. Some people actually use it as a form of punishment. And you're just thinking, why would anybody do that? What are they getting out of it? But, I mentioned that element of control, and that's the one that's behind pretty much everything. So when somebody wants some release because they're in an emotional state that's really difficult for them, they're trying to regulate that state. They're trying to change that emotional state. They're taking control over that emotional state. If they're having a lot of thoughts that are very unpleasant, or they might be having a lot of memories or flashbacks that are very unpleasant, again, they're using self-harm to break that cycle, or as an attempt to break that cycle, as an attempt to control what's happening to them. And we often see people who might be in abusive situations. Again, they use self-harm because they can control something. And quite often in that situation, they just can't control very much. They can't control what's happening to them. They can't get out of it. So they're looking for some control somewhere. So that issue with control, if somebody thinks about it that way, a lot of the self-harm will make a lot more sense. Sometimes you have to really think about it and start really kind of exploring what's happening for that person. Why are they feeling that they don't have control?
And presumably then the pain that they are getting from self-harming isn't enough.
Yeah, you touched another interesting thing there. A lot of people think that we're doing it for the pain. Some people do, a lot of people don't. A lot of us don't feel it while we're doing it.
Okay.
It's just we get into the sort of mental zone that kind of blocks the pain signals reaching the brain. It just puts us in a kind of mental state that we don't experience that sort of stuff. So again, just to try to generalize that people are getting pain from it, you don't necessarily get pain when you're restricting what you're eating. You might get a lot of pain when you binge eat, but not when you're restricting. Not at that time. If it
Mm,
progresses, yeah, perhaps, yeah, then because your body starts shutting down. But so they're not doing it for the pain there. When somebody is using methods that are not painful that very minute, somebody taking an overdose, they're not going to experience anything for a while
mm,
until everything gets into the system, and even then they might not. Depends on what they've taken and how much. So they're not doing it for the pain. But if you look at it through
mm,
the control element again, it starts making a lot more sense. You're taking something, you're doing something you're in control of, even if it's just for a few seconds. But for somebody who doesn't feel that they've got any control, those few seconds are absolutely priceless. So again, there's a lot of these things. Like I said, it's a lot more complex than what people think, and people might
mm,
think that we enjoy the pain. Those of us who might be feeling it. And again, some people need it. It's what they're after when they self harm, but because they need to feel something, or they need to feel something that makes a lot more sense. That's a lot more logical. Because emotional pain is not particularly logical, but physical pain
mm,
is a lot more logical. Something's happening which causes the pain. The brain can grasp that much better. So, yeah, we got to be really careful again with this pain thing. And some people, like I said, they're not interested in the pain side of it at all. That it's the act of self harm that gives them that sensation, that feeling of being in control. The pain that might come with it or afterwards, they don't want it. They can't avoid it, but they don't particularly want it.
no.
So it varies quite a lot from person to person.
Do you, I mean, I don't know what age you were when you experienced it, but is there an age group where it's more prevalent?
Well, I experienced quite a typical age of 13. That's when I started. Uh, and yeah, that's kind of roughly the most common age that we see. It used to be, for girls, used to be 13 to 14 was the most common age. For boys, was 14 to 15. Unfortunately, that's all dropping now. So we see more girls starting at the ages of 11 to 12. Boys are 13 to 14. We've seen a lot more children who are starting between the ages of 9 and 10. It's like puberty starts earlier in a lot of cases, don't we? We see that these young
Mm,
people seem to just grow faster. So when all the puberty issues come in, all this identity, who am I? Where do I belong? Where do I fit in this world? They all kick in earlier. So unfortunately, self harm starts coming in earlier as well. But at the moment, and especially with the pandemic, there's an increase across the board. We've
mm,
seen huge increase in adults, huge increase in older adults as well, who are experiencing a lot of isolation problems, a lot of change of routine, lack of communication with people. They can't just go out and go to their coffee mornings and all that stuff. They've missed out on a lot of these social activities, and they're not the
mm.
sort of people that will jump on a laptop and do a virtual thing. So
No,
they've
no.
experienced really, very high levels of isolation, and quite a few of them have taken up self harm in the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Good heavens.
Yeah,
Incredible. It's your support group, which is led, isn't it, by all of them are survivors who support them. In our area at the moment, you're not in our area, so everything is online, isn't it, by Zoom, all the
yeah, we,
meetings.
we are we are based in Leeds, West Yorkshire.
Mm,
So before the pandemic, we were mostly doing face-to-face stuff. We do have a private Facebook group, which is our online support group. Um, and then the pandemic arrived. Obviously, we had to stop the face-to-face, and we dipped our toes into the virtual world. We were very hesitant. We do struggle quite often to kind of venture into new things like this, and that is also because quite a lot of us are on the autistic spectrum, and we're finding these kind of changes really difficult to get our heads around. So we thought, well, let's just try it and see how that works. And it was absolutely a fantastic move for us, because very soon we realised that actually we can open these up. It doesn't just have to be for Leeds and Yorkshire. We can just open them up to anybody who needs it. So at the moment we've got 11 groups, I think. I keep forgetting how many. I keep counting them and I keep forgetting how many there are. I think there's 11. 10 of them are for people who self-harm themselves. And out of those 10, 9 of them is what we call the standard groups. So it's for anybody really who self-harms. These are adult groups, by the way, just going to make it quite clear. So it's 18 plus.
Yeah.
We also have one group for people who might be currently managing the self-harm quite well, or they might be going through a better period where they might experience some urges, or they might have situations that are a bit, they might struggle with, but they still need some support. And it's a bit of a lighter kind of touch sort of group. And we make sure the conversations don't get too heavy as well. So we make sure, that these people can get the help to remain at a good place.
Mm.
And then the 11th group, that's the group for parents and family. So it's a specific group for, if you've got a loved one who self-harms of any age. So we get people whose, children are children, might be 11, might be 14, whatever, whose children might be adults. We got, some families where their child is in the 30s. We also have siblings attending, that are just trying to find a way to support and try to understand what's happening. And obviously the fact that we've got these kind of insights and we can talk to them about, right, this sounds like, because like for me, this is how it works and this is how my brain thinks. And they go, that makes a lot more sense now.
Mm.
Give them that opportunity to kind of look into our heads a little bit and try to figure out that's how it works for you. Because quite often that the person that they're trying to support is too young, not able to
Yeah.
explain what's going on, not mature enough to explain what's going on, haven't had the chance.
Probably don't understand what's going on, do they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking
Yeah.
to somebody who's been there is quite
Mm.
helpful. And also, they are quite isolated themselves. You can't just start a conversation with your neighbour. Oh, my child's self-harming at the moment and I don't know what to do.
Mm.
It's not the sort of conversation you start, unfortunately.
It's got a stigma to it, hasn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, the stigma on self-harm is absolutely huge. And
Mm.
like, what creates stigma? Fear. People are afraid of it for various reasons. Like you said earlier, it doesn't make sense to you. Why
Mm.
do we turn on ourselves? It doesn't make sense. So for somebody, that's quite a scary thing. And quite a lot of people thinking, well, if you can turn on yourself, then does that mean you would turn on other people?
Yeah.
There's that
I
fear.
suppose it scares people. They think they might be a danger to
Yeah,
public, or
yeah.
yeah.
And actually, it's the opposite. Quite often we turn on ourselves because we really, really don't want to turn on anybody else. This one,
Mm.
and like you see, people might get angry and might explode and might, let it out on somebody else. More often than not, that's something that we're not able to do, which is why we turn to self-harm in the first place, because it helps us ground and calm down and try to let it go.
Mm.
So we do not explode, so we do not attack somebody else in whichever fashion. So a lot of people will, like I said, will turn on themselves because really we just don't like hurting anybody else.
No. No. So if you were affected by it through someone in your family, how would you be able to join your groups? You have to be invited, or
For all the virtual groups, there's a very simple self-referral form on the website. There's one for the standard and in-betweeners, because we like people to make a choice at that point. So they can ask to be invited to the standard groups, but they might think, but sometimes actually I'm in a better place and I'd like to access the in-betweeners group. Sometimes I'm not in that good a place, so I like to access the standard groups again. So we allow them to register for both. They get the invites for both. Then they have to make the choice. How do I feel today? Which one's best for me? Which is a big part of what we try to do, is get people to become a bit more self-aware, have choices, but take responsibility for their own choices as well. And for the parents group, we got just like a separate little form, because that's the only group that they can sign up for really, with just that one form. It's just we're looking for slightly different information. But the very simple things, people can put whichever name they want. So if somebody doesn't want to give us the full name, they don't have to. They can just give us a first name, whichever it is they're happy with. We need an email address, because that's how we're going to invite them. We're asking about the first part of their postcode, and that's for us more for statistical purposes than anything else. And how they found out about us, again, more for statistical purposes, just to see what's happening, how are people finding out about us. And then they join an invite list. So this chances are they'll be added to the list within 2 or 3 days, depending when we get a chance to get around to adding them to it. And then we'll immediately start getting invites. It's usually about a couple of days before each group we open bookings for them, and they can book as and when they want. So let's say somebody signed up for the parents group, which is running next Tuesday. They can't make that particular one, fair enough, but they can make the one 2 weeks after, so they can join that one. And then if they skip another one, it's not a course. It's not something that they have to attend on a regular basis. They can access it when they need it.
So you just chat on there, and people can ask questions and things.
Yeah, it depends. It depends which group it is. So the parents group, people tend to just kind of bring what it is they're dealing with, what the situation is, what the problems are. And for those who are attending more regularly, is an ongoing thing. So like, okay, so we had a good week, but this is what's happening. Or we were discussing this with them, and we're not quite sure where to go from here. So we'll try to support them with that. But as you can imagine, especially for those who attend for the first time, it's the first time they get a chance to openly talk about it to people who will understand.
Yeah.
So it's quite a relief for a lot of people. For the other groups, or the ones for the people who do self-harm, most of them have got a topic. So we tend to have something that the facilitators have picked that they're going to focus on. So they've done a bit of prep work. There might be some not slides, but some interactive boards that they can use as a group. It could be just based on conversation, but on that topic. So they will try to kind of stick to that topic, unless the conversation is still quite relevant and it expands in a really nice way. That's quite useful. Let's say they're talking about waste to ground, and somebody might start expanding a little bit more into specific ways to ground, for example, or something that they've done, or you might go a little bit off topic as well, but it's still very relevant and very useful. Facilitators.
Can I just go back to that? What did you say? Ways to ground?
Yeah, for example, when you need to ground to feel that, you're connecting with the earth again, you're present, you're back in the moment, you're back in the room, sort of thing. It's a lot of people will use self-harm as a method to ground. Unfortunately, it's very, very effective in a lot of ways, which is why people use it. If it didn't do anything for us, none of us would use it. So it's just with that particular group, for example, was about discussing healthier ways to ground. How can we help ourselves feel more grounded, more present? So that's just
how could they? If you're supporting someone who's self-harming, what other ways could you encourage them to use to ground?
It depends on what works for people. So for somebody, and one that's quite commonly used, and a lot of people use it when they're quite anxious, is that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's like 5 things you see, 4 things you hear. That it goes through the different senses basically, because it allows them to kind of focus, search. In the meantime, they start being back in the moment, back in the room, or back in that environment where they're in. And that kind of allows the brain to just go, right, this is what I am, this is what I'm doing. I can start moving on with life now. For other people, it could be a matter of doing something they enjoy. It could be dancing, could be sports, could be just standing on the grass. For some people that works quite well. Could be having a shower. You just got to find what works for you. That's the whole thing. The whole idea of the groups is that we're just bringing all these ideas, And then people can go, oh, I'm going to try this actually next time I'm feeling disconnected and not in touch with reality, sort of thing, you know. So that's just kind of one of the, like I said, one of the things that kind of popped into my head. But we do have two groups where we call them the what bothers me groups. So people will bring what bothers them to the group. So we could have anything from somebody being off work sick with their mental health and quite worried about how they're going to go back. It could be a situation that they're trying to build a support network, for example, and they don't know how to do that, or maybe some of the people that they've tried haven't particularly responded too well. How do they handle it? So it really depends, you know, like I said, depends what bothers them at the time. We are very careful about what sort of conversations obviously we're having in the groups. The whole idea is that there's some positive outcome. It's not about making people more distressed. It's not about obviously encouraging self-harm in any way. Conversations about safe self-harm do come up, and self-care quite a lot, because at the end of the day, you know, if you're going to self-harm, you might as well do it safely. There's no point inviting infections. There's no point punishing yourself even more. And then we start going back into, some people do not look after their injuries, do not use self-care, because that's just another form of self-harm. Self-neglect and all that is another form of self-harm. But it all just kind of drops into the view of themselves that they have, that they don't deserve to be good to themselves, that they don't deserve care, they don't deserve love, they don't deserve all that. And obviously with us trying to encourage them to use self-care, that we're chipping away at that belief, basically. You do
That
deserve
they're
to look
worth
after
it.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And partly, you know, the fact that we put in all these services, like, no, you are worth the services, and you are worth the time, and you are worth the support. So it's all just constantly just chipping away at those beliefs. We know it's extremely difficult to get them to change what they believe and how they see themselves. And it does take time. But we try to provide the safe environments where they can at least, you know, even if it's just exploring, where did that belief come from?
Yeah.
You know, why do I still believe that about myself?
Is this something that will pass, or is it always, with alcoholics, they say once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, because there's always the fear that it could creep back in. Is it the same with self-harm, or is it something that is a phase in your life that you will go through?
I would never call it a phase. I think that's really dangerous, calling it a phase, because more often than not, it's not. But it might appear like a phase if it was something very specific that set it off, and the person was using self-harm to manage a particular situation. Somebody could use self-harm to manage a bereavement, for example.
Yeah.
And then eventually they go through the bereavement process, it's behind them, and they leave the self-harm there as well. Problem is, they're aware that the self-harm is an option. So further down in life, something else happens that again causes distress and makes them feel quite unsettled. They might bring it back out. Now that is something we do see quite a lot. People that have put it behind them, and then 10 years later, something else happens, and ta-da, self-harm comes into play again. So it's like it's stored. It's an option. It's a way to manage things. It's a way to cope with what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. So in most cases, the way to overcome it is, for starters, is to learn to manage it. We're not for stop self-harming
No.
suddenly. Idea that if anything could be really dangerous for a lot of people. It's something I did and it backfired awfully. It's just, it's like all of a sudden I just kind of chucked away the one thing that was working for me without having any other options. I didn't have
Yeah.
better methods to cope. I was relying on it, and then I just suddenly stopped. My brain went, "What do you think you're doing? What am I supposed to do now?" So we encourage people to learn to manage it a little bit at a time. Start bringing in different things like distractions, ways different strategies, just building their strategies, how to manage different situations. how to manage them in healthier ways. And if the self-harm still comes in and has a role, fair enough. But as you develop better ways, self-harm starts becoming less and less important. You are
Mm,
developing a support network, for example, you've got people to talk to. You might not avoid every single time you want to self-harm, but you might avoid quite a few of them, which is quite a big win. And it's just slowly just learning these strategies, picking different things, which is quite a lot of experimentation, quite a lot of just testing things out and see what works. But at the same time, it's about understanding yourself and just raising that self-awareness. What are you doing it? Why are you doing it? What's happened? Which is not a quick process. It takes a very long time for somebody to get there. And that's what we help people do. Just help
yeah,
them just explore what's going on, explore themselves, learn about themselves, learn about what makes them tick, and what else could help them calm down, ground, get rid of that anger, reach out, manage the situation better so it doesn't affect them that much. So there's quite a lot that can be done, and
mm,
somebody could, yes, very very definitely could get to the point where they do not need self-harm anymore. They have developed the better ways to manage things. They don't need it anymore. But again, it's about encouraging people to have a go at doing things, having a go at achieving something in life, no matter how small.
mm,
There is that belief that, and we see it very much amongst our service users, like, oh, I need to stop self-harming so that I can go to college, get a job, find a relationship. And it's like, no, you got it the wrong way around. You go for these things despite the self-harm, because
mm,
while you're achieving stuff and you start feeling better about yourself, then the self-harm becomes secondary, and then you might find that you just don't need it anymore because you made yourself a stronger person.
so go out there and try and do things and try and get involved in activities, I suppose. But then that's
Yeah,
hard because I suppose part of
it
it
is.
is you're hiding away, aren't you?
Mhm. Yeah, which is why we're saying, so it doesn't. It's not about going out and just getting involved in activities, but it could be about finding a way to help somebody create something. Because not everybody's up to going out and getting involved in activities or being social.
Mm,
And quite often, and a lot of the people that we're dealing with their anxiety being so high, and possibly autism, ADHD thrown in, they're not in a position to enjoy social situations. If anything, that's going to make them worse. But be creative, write, draw, dance, whatever. Allow yourself to feel good about what you're doing.
mm,
And a lot of people just not doing that. And it's like, oh no, I'm rubbish. Actually, I'm worthless. I shouldn't be here. I've got no place. I'm not contributing. So, well, you can contribute, but you can do it your way. And you can do it in a way that is acceptable and possible for you. And that's step number one. You just do a little bit. You just try to feel that you do have a little purpose, and you can create something beautiful.
mm. If you, someone in your family or someone you knew was close to you was self-harming, what help is there out there that you could get for them? Or have they got to consent to it?
It's not about consenting to it. It's like two questions you've kind of asked there.
Oh, okay.
So, in terms of help and what, it's, like I said, the consent thing, it's really important that they accept what's going on. That person is not self harming to hurt them. Something's happening, something's distressing them. They're trying to deal with something. So, accepting the person as they are and what they're doing at that moment in time is really important, because it's far more important to start building on communication and trust than for that person at that moment to stop self-harming. Unless we're talking about life-threatening type of
Mm,
self-harm, the risk obviously is a lot higher. It's quite different. But even then, the communication and the trust are the most important elements. If you don't build that with that person, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to open up. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to be the person they're going to reach out to. And that's really what we need. So we need the family. We need that immediate environment to be safe, accepting, and I said, yeah, it's just to work with them, not to tell them what to do.
No. So it's almost the family need the support and the advice more than the
Quite a lot.
self. Yeah,
Quite
yeah.
often, yeah, that's what we find. You know, that if we can help the family understand a bit what's going on, to create that environment where the person's fully accepted, they don't have to hide the self-harm, for example. They can be a bit more open about it, because then there's a much higher chance that they're going to talk about what's bothering them, about what's going on, because that's really what we need to deal with. You know, the self-harm is more, it's an indicator something is not quite right. It's not the problem by itself. There is another problem that is causing the self-harm, and that's the one that we really need to work on. Yes, we need to manage the self-harm, but it will never gonna, the person's never gonna get past it unless we can deal with what's going on. And somebody would argue, yeah, but that happened in the past and it's not about dealing with it because there's nothing I can do about it. Well, then it's more about accepting that it is in the past and try to find a way to move forward. Because, yeah, we can't change the past, but we can change how we think about it, and we can change how it affects us. So we do have some power over it. But again, it's a difficult concept for a lot of people who are hurting. If you're hurting, you're not really thinking about these things. You're just thinking, this hurts and I want it to stop.
Yeah.
As for support that's out there, unfortunately, nowhere near as much as is needed. We know, like, schools are absolutely desperate, but they're very hesitant to reach out to us. Even though we're constantly reaching out to them, especially in Leeds, they really hesitate to reach out to us. I think there is
Is it
quite a lot of
because they're
fear.
frightened that it might almost bring it to the notice of people, to children, and they might start doing it?
Yeah, they think that if we talk to people about self-harm, then they're going to take it up. The problem is they're already aware of it and they're already using it, but they don't understand it, and they don't understand that a lot of the young people think that it is a phase. They think that they'll turn 18 and everything's just going to change, and that's not how it works. Self-harm will adapt and morph and mutate and grow up with you, and if you rely on it, it will always be there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're trying to go in and try to talk to the young people and say, right, these are the truths of it. It is very addictive. You start relying on it more and more. It does grow up with you. He starts, modify. He changes to suit your needs. And somebody would think, well, that's really good, isn't it? Yeah, but the biggest problem with self-harm is that it stops us from learning those healthier ways to cope with life that could take a little bit more effort. So we go for the quick, easy fix that really fixes not a lot, really. It
Yeah.
can't fix what's troubling us. It can't fix the problem. It hasn't got that kind of power. It just gives us some short-term relief, grounding, distraction. Allows us to just ignore it or whatever.
What gave you the strength to overcome it and then offer support for others?
Well, to be honest, I
If
have
you're
not
happy to
overcome it
talk
yet.
about that.
I have not overcome it yet.
Okay.
Partly because that backfiring I mentioned earlier, it caused me a lot of harm, and then it caused me some serious mental health issues, and the medication I was put on, unfortunately, did not agree with me. So it's left me with permanent damage. So I have not been able to completely get rid of self-harm. I'm really good at managing it, really good at managing pretty much every single trigger that comes my way, but unfortunately it still has a role to play. And for me and for a lot of other people that we know, that role is to stop us to try to take our own lives. So we end up using self-harm as the last resort to stop taking that next step. So yeah, unfortunately, I have not completely overcome it. What prompted me to get some help was that when I tried, and it was only 6 years ago, I kept it to myself. I kept it secret for 30 years before I
Yeah.
opened up about it. And when I did open up about it and looked for help, I really couldn't find any. There just didn't seem to be any support out there. I thought, okay, if this is as common as you're telling me it is, I sort of expected that somebody would have some better ideas about how to deal with it. And all they were offering me was elastic bands and ice cubes, which, to be honest, is quite a ridiculous suggestion for many reasons. Most of the time, it doesn't work for people, but there's a huge problem with them. They are forms of self harm. They're supposed to cause pain, therefore, they are self harm. So we just basically, a lot of the professionals have been telling people use one form of self harm instead of the one that you're using. So what's the benefit of that? So they don't end up
Yeah.
with scars. Yeah, that's the only benefit. And it doesn't, and those around them don't get upset, but they're still using self harm, and the brain's getting the message when in distress, self harm's the answer. We want them to move away from that completely. The whole point is to look for better answers that have nothing to do with self harm.
Mm.
So, yeah, going back to your question, like I said, I didn't find the help I was hoping to find. I didn't really know what I was looking for. It was the first time I'd opened up about it. And I got quite angry because I was getting really frustrated with that. And I thought, I need to find people who understand what I'm going through so I can at least talk to somebody that I know will understand. So that's kind of what started it all off, and then it was more, well, can we do something a bit more? What does it look like people would find useful? Let's try to start some groups and see how that goes. We didn't think it was going to turn into a charity, we supporting people all over the UK. And we've only been going as a charity for just short of 4 years now. So we haven't been around that long. We're still quite new as an organisation. So yeah, that's kind of what prompted it. And the more we were looking into it, the more we're realising how widespread it is, how big an issue it is, how big the lack of support, how big an issue that is. There just aren't very many organisations. That I think there's only like 4 of us altogether in the UK that specifically work on self harm, and we're the only ones who work
Oh,
both
sorry,
face
the
to
sun's in
face.
my
Oh,
eyes. It'll
Yeah,
cloud over in a minute.
no
Carry
cloud
on.
over. Yeah. Yeah, we operate. We support people of all ages. We support people of all genders. We offer face to face and we offer virtual, and we do have a phone service in Leeds as well, which we're hoping will expand at some point to further afield. So that makes us
Yeah.
another reason it makes us quite unique. Like I said, apart from the fact that everybody within Battle Scars you speak to has got lived experience. So anybody you're going to talk to, whether it's face to face, whether it's on the phone, or whether it's by email or whatever, that they understand what you're going through. And I think that helps a lot of people kind of not drop the defenses as such, but drop the barriers and be
Yeah. Yeah.
more open.
Yeah, I suppose because it's quite easy for the layman like myself to go in and try and help, but absolutely do the wrong thing completely, say the wrong thing. So, yeah, and it's like, well, what do you know? You've never experienced it. So, which is fair
Yeah,
enough. It's a fair comment, isn't it?
it is, and people were going with the best of intentions. And yeah, like you said, some of the stuff that people have said, and it will just
Mm.
hear it, and it's like, oh no, that was the worst thing you could have said.
Yeah, that's probably me.
But there's stuff like we see a lot from families uh, or partners or whatever to just go to ask somebody to promise them not to self harm. That's just bound to fail
Mm.
because that's just not enough to hold it back. They'll
Yeah.
hold it back for a certain length of time, but after that,
Yeah. And then I suppose if they do then self harm, they feel that they've broken that promise, and yeah, that's just
it all just it gets
yeah.
really bad then because then
Mm.
they could try to hide it. We often find people who swap methods of self harm. So they could have been superficially cutting, for example, which is obviously quite common. And because they're trying to suppress that an eating disorder starts developing, which is actually so much more dangerous than what they were doing.
Mm.
They start overdosing because nobody can see any scars with it. So they start going for methods that are easier to hide, but could be far, far more dangerous. So
Mm.
again, that's where the acceptance comes in. And I was talking to a mum yesterday, and she said, "I want to, but I can't accept it." So yes, I know, I
Mm.
understand that. Just accept that this is what it's like now. You don't have to accept that the self harm's there to stay, but you just gotta have to start from somewhere. So okay, this is where we are now. How
I
do we move
suppose as a
forward?
parent, you'd feel that you failed them in some way, that they
Yeah,
feel the need of doing that, feel the need to do that.
we get that so often, and
Mm.
it's pretty much an automatic response from parent.
Mm.
It is what you feel instantly. Where have I gone wrong? What have I messed up? What did I not do right that they've ended up having to use self harm? Um, and quite often it's just the way it just happens. The parent could have done nothing more.
Mm.
Um, that as parents, we just cannot protect the children from everything. And I think instead of trying to focus and protect them from everything, we really need to focus on how do we equip them for as much as possible. And it's a conversation we're having quite a few times in the family groups. We're saying that one of the mistakes that we make as parents, and again, it's just a very natural thing that we do, is like when we're struggling, for example, when we're distressed, when we're upset about something, when we are worried about something, that we hide it from our children. We don't want to burden them, we don't want to upset them, we don't want to do all that.
Mm.
But what we're also doing is we're robbing them of an opportunity to learn about how we're going to manage that situation, how we're going to manage our distress, how we're going to manage what we're feeling.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't let them see how we get through it. And then all of a
No,
sudden, they pick up self harm, and we're like, but try something else. And then we're like,
but what?
what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that makes
Uh,
perfect sense. Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, it's been absolutely eye-opening for me. It really has. And a few people that I know. Hopefully, it will help me understand it a little bit more. Hopefully, people will see all that we put all the links in the comments. So if people need any support, they can get in contact with yourselves. Your Facebook page, you have to join that, don't you? You have to actually. You just have
yeah,
to question or something, don't
yeah.
you?
For the Facebook group, you have to agree to the rules.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems to be that there's a whole list of them. They're there for a reason. They've been developed over the last 6 years. Uh,
Mm.
they are for keeping everybody safe. Really, a lot of
Yeah.
people think it makes a lot of sense why we don't allow graphic photographs and graphic descriptions of self harm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand why we don't allow members to connect outside of the group and private message each other. Think about, we're just making
Yeah.
friends or stuff like that. I said, yeah, but you don't know who you're making friends with. You don't know who you communicate. You're in this group because you're quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you're making contact with somebody who might also be vulnerable, but might also not be vulnerable, and just be in the group and pretending to be somebody else. We can't,
Mm.
nobody could ever know. And we did have an incident very early on when we set the group up. And it was very dangerous what was going on. And
Okay.
obviously, because we couldn't see it, we couldn't support them. They came to us afterwards. The one person nearly killed themselves basically because the other person was egging them on. And I think
Okay.
it appeared that it was quite a nice little friendship that was going to start there, but actually, it was not a
Mm.
safe thing. So
No.
we asked people to keep all communication in the group. Then we can support them because we're checking everything.
I was going to say, have you got someone who,
We got a whole team of people.
yeah,
We
yeah,
got a whole team of people just checking every post, every comment, everything that
yeah.
gets put in the group, make sure it's right. And it is about, that we tried to create an environment where it's about, again, that acceptance, that safe space. It's not about
Mm.
criticizing anybody, it's about encouraging somebody to take the next step, to open up a bit more, to try something different, to learn something different. It's also a place where we celebrate our achievements. Once a week, one of our members puts an achievements post up, and we say, you know, what we achieved during the week, because it's really important that we recognize this stuff. This is, you know, this is the positive side of our lives, and we really should celebrate them. And we just, for somebody, the achievement was that throughout a week they managed to get out of bed most of the days. That's huge.
Yeah.
But where do you post that? Where do you share? Who do you share that with?
Yeah.
More often than
Yeah.
not, it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah. If you put it on your general Facebook, you'd probably get a lot of negative comments, wouldn't you?
yeah, you could, yeah, exactly. You know, and
Mm.
especially for young people, even though we know the majority of people in the group are like 16 upwards, we don't have a lot of very young ones that take part. But it's important for them to understand that, you know, what you see on Facebook from your mates and in general is not the full picture. It's not the real picture.
No.
And then hopefully, at least in our group, they can allow the real picture to show. And it's something that we use throughout the organisation. The peer support model runs on every level. The whole idea is that we don't have to mask how we are within the organisation. So, you know, I can easily say I'm having a rubbish day, and any of my staff can say the same. So it's a matter of, okay, how do we support you get through today? That's the automatic thing that we do. It's not about,
Having a bad day and they've commented on Facebook about it, would you contact them, reach out to them and offer some support?
not individually, no.
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 So you'll leave it
try
for
and
the
promote
other
in the group.
members to support them.
No, I mean we're all members of the group. So you know,
Yeah.
if I've got time and I've got something useful to say, then I'll add it. You know,
Yeah.
same with the staff,
Okay.
same with the volunteers, same with the admin team. We do make it clear we're not obliged to do that. So you know, because we're all struggling with our mental health, we're struggling with our lives, we're busy, we're working, so we're not there all the time. Between us all, there's always somebody checking. But so, and it's also that we want to encourage the other members to offer support. Helping
Yeah.
somebody else is very helpful for us. Again, it's helping somebody else makes us feel useful. So we do encourage that very much. We do try to help somebody else, even if just to say, I haven't got anything useful to say, but I've read your post and I'm here and I'm listening. That can make quite a big difference in somebody's life when they're feeling that they're totally isolated and nobody's listening.
Yeah. 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 Brilliant. Wow, there's a lot to think about there, Jenny. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you, Linda.
what a wonderful job you're doing. And that's
We try.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you, Jenny. And if we get anybody contacting us who wants any more information, we'll send them all the links for your organisation.
Please go on our website. We're a tiny team and we all work from home because we don't have premises. So please don't all just pick up the phone and start ringing, because it'll be me trying to answer it.
Yeah, we won't give your phone number out.
All the
Oh,
information
thank you.
is on our website, so people will be able to find pretty much what they're after. But if they struggle, definitely contact us through the website.
Okay, lovely. Well, thanks very much, Jenny.
Thanks a lot.
You.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that is the end of our broadcast for today. I hope you found it very useful, and we will speak to you all next week. So thanks for your time, everyone. Bye-bye.